the Jake Giffen Podcast.
Julian Raven, you are an artist. You've done a lot of things in your life, and you are a super interesting guy that I stumbled across on a platform. I've been on this journey the last several years of just in my journey with Christ and his expression through humans, whether it's the internal combustion engine or it's impressionistic paintings. It is a beautiful thing to see what he's been doing. And your work, my man, is bonkers, man. I wish I could bring more artsy vernacular to your conversation here. I'm super ignorant, so I'm just going to ask you questions about art and your expression and how you feel God is using you to express his beauty. And give us some idea of your background. Then remind me, I'm going to ask you about what the role of a paint or what the differences are in impressionistic versus realism or whatever, and kind of educate the audience on that. But tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, hi, Jake. Thank you for having me on. And that story about art and the understanding of art is a whole chapter, should I say, in itself, as far as even my objective in helping folks understand the language of art, the pictorial language that in many camps has been neglected. So we can get to that in a wee bit, because it is a passion and a burden of mine. Now, going back to who and where I come from and who I am, born in London, England, and my family moved to southern Spain when I was very young, at the age of 2. They had driven through Europe. They'd gone down through Spain, through France, through Spain to Portugal, and it was so beautiful. This is in the early 70s, 1972 to be precise. And they went to Portugal, drove through a town in Spain called Marbella, and fell in love with it, and rightly so. It is a spectacularly beautiful place. Culture, the people, Spanish people are very precious. The food, the wine. Spain is a beautiful place, it just is. You know, my father being an entrepreneur, at the time, the fax machine had just been invented, and he sort of reasoned, maybe I can run my business from the golf course in Spain. And so he did, and he was a pioneer. And he started to run his business back in London from the golf course. And my parents,
using a fax machine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the details,
for him.
But yeah, it was just I remember this conversation coming down to me. That was his, and that's when I look at my life as an entrepreneur. I know that sort of pioneering entrepreneurial mindset was what I inherited from him. It's Marbella, Spain is a beautiful. Today, it's one of the most visited, or at least desirable, place to visit in Europe and the world. The state or province of Malaga, in which the town is located, again, is one of the most highly sought after cities now. The capital city, Malaga, is the most highly visited. It was number 1 on Forbes list. I think it was this year or last year, as a destination. Wow. It's amazing. So that was my background. Colorful, beautiful, cultural, just a really special place to live. A lot of nature and sun and sea and fishing, and just a very beautiful life. Spain gives you a very beautiful life.
It must have had an impact on you, because you have a gallery there?
Yeah, I've just got back from Spain in May this year. I've been there for the last year and a half. We went because my mom had been very English. She didn't tell me the full details all the time. She was very reserved about her health, but we spoke every day, and yet she would be, I'm not well and things are going on. I'm having tests, and this time she'd give me all this talk until my brothers call up and say, Mum's not doing well at all. And I find out she has lymphatic cancer. So my wife and I went there at the end of 2023, and we stayed because my mum sadly passed. And then we decided to stay in my hometown as we could. Our kids are grown here in the US. They're all at university, and we're like, they're good. We can do this. So leave them over there and we'll be fine. And we did. And I had 2 studios while I was down there. And one studio gallery was where we were for the last year, and probably a year and 3 months. And just a wonderful place to be and be an artist. And it's for me, it's my hometown. So just to be there, there's family there and friends, long-term friends, and schools and professors, and just the deep sort of memories we have of our childhood, very precious in that place.
Is that Marbella or New York?
Marbella.
Yeah, Marbella. Yeah. Condolences for your mom, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, special woman. Really, just my father passed when I was very young. So she was like mom and dad in a foreign country. She really fought for her three boys as a widow and just a culture that was not hers. And I'm glad she stuck it out down there because it afforded us a wonderful life, but it wasn't easy. And my number one art fan, she's always cheered me on, a wonderful, encouraging woman. She encouraged her sons. You know, she stuck with it and she cheered us on as best she could.
Yeah.
And she's a really the most supportive person in my life. Big loss for me, not just as a mother, but even professionally, because she was always like, "So what's going on, Julian? What's the news?" You know, always wanting to know. You know, very English, like I said. So a beautiful woman, kind-hearted, servant heart, and a confession of Jesus. Although she struggled with her faith and really walking as a disciple, she had a conversion experience at a church we were at here in the US, and then would go back to Spain and would sort of backslide and never really move forward. But in her dying days, that confession became louder, which was a blessing to hear.
That is huge.
Yeah, very much so. Thank
Yeah,
God.
cheerleaders like that, especially when you're an artist. I mean, how it's like, you know, when you're an artist, for the most part, you're intending on taking some vow of poverty. There's with maybe the exception of your entrepreneurialism, right?
Yeah.
Like your business mindset. But
it doesn't. But that's the problem. It doesn't work parallel. That's the biggest struggle that I have. Yeah, I can do one or the other well. I can't do them both simultaneously. It's been my struggles and my failures as an artist where that gallery you saw in Marbella, and I had one in Virginia, two in Virginia, one near Washington, D.C., and one near in Lynchburg, where our children were at Liberty University. Where I'm standing is my upstate New York gallery, which is a beautiful, amazing building I have, but it's in the middle, like, of nowhere. The town of Elmira is like a ghost town. There's nothing going on here.
Yeah.
And so you want exposure because my work is very large. It's much better to be seen in person. But trying to turn it into a business, an art, I have not managed to do that. There is art is too particular and too specific and too individual to try to and I've tried, and I've sold and I've done, but I can't. It's not like a product that you can keep polishing, and it just doesn't work. So one of the hard lessons that I've been learning in the last decade of my life.
Do you find at some level of trying to mix the two that you run into a line where you start feeling like you're compromising what it is that you want to do?
That's exactly the point. Now, you want to be commercial, you want to sell, you would like to make money, you want to sell your art. But then there's a part of it which is like, if I'm thinking that, I'm also a photographer. And so I got into then opening a photography studio and offering services. And those things are sort of cash generators. And photography, it's an amazing creative art form, but it's like because there's snapshots, the emotional time you have in one, the investment is so small that it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if it sells, it doesn't sell. You get 1,000 photographs a day and one sells, whatever. Yeah. But with a painting, and you're so invested and you've poured this, it's this all-consuming experience, and then the painting is sitting there, and it's like, oh my God, they don't want it. It's not. It's like it's somewhat traumatic many times because of the ups and downs that comes with painting. So yeah, you can see. You're perceptive there in the struggles of the artist, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, help us understand, what is impressionist? What are all these forms that you're currently doing? I know you're well versed. It seems like in several different styles, but what is?
Yeah,
what are you
I would be technically classified as far as technique goes. You know, you're multimedia. I'm not, my desire has always been, my curiosity is always leading me to explore. But then you're looking as a believer when I came back to I hadn't painted for years. I used my creative gifts, and this is going back to the previous question. I'd used my creative gifts like as a woodworker and a cabinet maker and a designer of furniture for many years and built a business. And that was a profitable product business that I could use as a way of using my gifts.
Yeah.
But it's not fully expressive as an artist can be. It's expressive, but I was always even in my paint booths, painting furniture, that'd be painting, hand painting, this type of thing. I'd find myself looking at the floor where there would be like splashes of paint and just sort of random stuff. I'd be like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I mean, I remember getting the jigsaw out, cutting the floor out and hanging it on the wall. Like, that's amazing.
Wow.
There's something that combination of lines and colors and textures and that randomness, that's the sort of abstract aspect, remarkable to me. I'm just thrilled by that. So the expressiveness is constrained in the business, like in the woodwork, but then the artwork, when you're really going for it. And as a Christian, when I came back to the canvas, and probably 15 years ago, as a minister, I've been a preacher of the gospel since I had a dramatic conversion experience in southern Spain, from an atheist to meeting God on a mountain. Mm-hmm. My life was changed. I became a theist. I didn't become a Christian yet. And then 2 years later, studying the Bible all alone, I had an encounter with Jesus. My life was turned upside down. I was born again, filled with the Holy Spirit, all alone, never having heard the gospel, never met a born again believer, just alone.
Wow.
So that's an experience. That's my whole Christian testimony in itself, God glorifying work. But since then, I've walked as somebody who's been passionate to share the gospel. And again, you're trying to assess, success or failure, and I could do this better, or how can I make people thirsty to hear? How can I make them curious? And that was what I was in the Western culture. It's so difficult to make people really want to listen. And so just developing methodologies to try to communicate the gospel, I then look to my own gifts. Well, I'm an artist. And then studying the abstract expressionist period, I happened to be doing that for either curiosity or just for some other reason at the time. Abstract expressionism was an art movement in the sort of 40s, building up to the 50s and 60s of the last century, with proponents like Jackson Pollock, Mark Rothko, Willem de Kooning. These are the names of people that really became the leaders of it. And their efforts were to try to express their inner world condition, their emotional state, through very bold, expressive forms of painting, where it was very gestural. Pollock was throwing paint.
Sure.
These are non-objective, non-representational forms of painting, very childlike forms of painting in many ways. But they were seeking to see whether or not they could really convey their inner mood. Can I tell you, when you look at this picture, does it communicate to you my state and my internal condition?
Yeah.
Bad. And they were very negative people in many ways. Pollock's life was a train wreck, and he died in a train wreck. He killed someone. And Mark Rothko, the same, took his life. And so really dark. And so their works, in a sense, embody that aspect of their lives. So I'm looking at this, and I thought, at the time I was very gospel minded in different ways, seeking different methods. And I'm like, well, I have such an experience with God that my inner world has been so impacted by the presence of the Lord, the Spirit of God that dwells within me. I'm like, can I convey that? Will that come out? You know what I'm saying? You're looking to see, and the only way is to start doing it and experiment and painting. And so I was saying, Lord, if this is true, and I can, then I'd love it to be a tool to generate conversations and maybe win people to Jesus. You're looking to see, you want to be a good steward of your gift. I've had varied success and failure again in that area, because what is viewed as abstract expressionism is not intelligible to the mind that is trying to make sense of it. That's the approach that's an error. You understand that when
Yeah.
people, and this goes to some of the question that you were asking, we'll get to the Impressionism, but the people approach abstract work. If they're not familiar with its language, they look at it and like, it's like my kid could do that. Or they're looking at it with eyes that only can see one way.
Yeah.
Other than this is a heart issue. You need to come there and be like, bypass the mind and see what does this say.
Yeah. That's why it's so important for us to get that mindset down, because there's a lot of people, like, we look at Pollock and we go, yeah, that looks like a mess. And if you don't know to put it on the frame of what does that say about his mindset when he's violently throwing, what's he feeling when he's painting that? Yeah. Like now I think everybody, at least who listens to this now and in the future, will be like, oh, is that what we're supposed to glean?
Well, that's it. This is the whole point. And it's the problem of the language being not misunderstood or not understood. And by saying that art only can be or must be representational, that we're trained to say, oh, if it really represents the subject, like a photograph. And listen, they're incredible painters that paint photographically, and it's a remarkable talent. And then they say, well, that's real art. And they say, well, no, that is art. It's a remarkable technique. But if I'm depressed, or if I'm struggling, or if I'm joyful and I have the joy of the Lord, and I want to convey that with color and lines and shape and textures, I can't sit there with a brush and paint myself with a smiling face. That doesn't do it. Yeah. My heart, I'm bursting. I'm like, oh, I'm just like, you want to just like, oh, you want to have that experience translate to canvas, so that when people, and I'll share this with you as a testimony. I've had at one show that I had years ago, these are non-believers seeing it. They came in and they said, one guy said, basically he knew the Pollock story and very just dark. And he says, but he says, you're happy Pollock. And I was like, cool. I'm like, that's cool. I can live with that. That showed that he received something positive from my work.
He saw your heart.
Right. The light and the joy or something that was conveyed. And I was like, yeah, I didn't say a word. He came up with that. That's how he viewed my work. That was huge. And then years later in Lynchburg, I had a vet come in with PTSD who was working with an organization trying to bring solutions to the vets suffering with this. And he came in, and after being in my gallery that I made bright and it was very colorful and beautiful, he says, I feel lighter in here. And I said, man, you have to write that down in the guest book, because that's a great response to my work. So there is some underlying communication going on that words and representational images don't communicate.
It's the spirit of it. There's right where it's kind of like there's no words. There's no, I don't know. Like if you go into Marbella and it's beautiful and there's a feeling about it. You go into downtown Los Angeles, there's a feeling about it. It's not Marbella.
No.
And that's like, you go into a gallery where they're presenting angry, depressed, abstract expressionists, and you feel if they expressed it, if you understand the language, like you said, you feel it.
Yeah.
And then you come into your place.
You're going to crawl out of that gallery.
You're going to crawl out of the gallery. You might be crying, looking for some kind of, look, they crawl out of that gallery looking for answers. They crawl into your gallery and they find Jesus.
That was the goal, that you build a bridge that can then tell, well, why did you respond like this? And then you get a chance to share, well, this is what my goal is. This is what I'm trying to do. And it becomes a stepping stone. That was my objective. The big problem that I have, and this is where you'll see this very quickly, Jake, is that the art world despises Christ. The art world is set against Christians. The art world is set against. So I've gone ad nauseum, and I don't do it anymore. It was a young artist. They do not want anybody who wants to say, look, I want to tell you about how I met Jesus. He changed my life. He filled me with the Holy Spirit. He delivered me. I was possessed. I was in darkness. I was lived this, and they're like, they do not want to hear that. And then you go to the Christians and they're like, well, that's not art. And this is the, and I had this whole, I even had that experience in Lynchburg, because Lynchburg is where Liberty University is, where my kids go to school. It's a huge Christian institution. And part of my going to Lynchburg to start a gallery was I had been there when my first daughter went to school and spoke to the art department and said, look, this is what I do. This is what I'm trying to do. This is how I'm trying to communicate the gospel and tell my story. And, you know, I'd like to sort of work with the art department or something, maybe have a presentation. So not interested, because they look at my work and they're like, this is not art. This represents something we don't believe in. And then I said, well, then they need to see my work in person. I'm going to open a gallery right down the street from them, which I did.
Yeah.
And I had good media coverage, and I invited people, and and they wouldn't come. And
they wouldn't even give it a chance.
No, this is not. No, because and listen, there are brothers in the Lord, but I understand the sort of the systems and the way people get very stuck in their ways. And I'm not that person. And so I again found myself in a sort of no man's land, because the art world is like, well, you're a Christian guy and your kids go to Liberty University, and, you know, you're, it's like this, they're like, and so it's a very strange experience I have. I am constantly in this no man's land. And the burden was to say to folks, listen, I get it. You like pictures that you understand and can read immediately. I get it. This is more interpretive. It's more sort of, you know, you're trying to feel your way to see if it has an impact on the way you feel. It's experiential. My paintings are huge. You want to come in. It's not of interest. And I made written presentations and proposals to them and ideas and visions, and said, look, this could be really cool. There's, you know, there's young students and they're wanting to see what the world's about. So anyway, that's part of it's a struggle.
That's the no man's land. That's the in between. You don't belong in the secular world. And then I've had friends that were, I have friends who are musicians who've been in, metal bands, like I'm a metal guy. I mean, I like all kinds of music, but metal is my therapy. And, I've had friends that were in, Christian metal bands, right? It's like they weren't overtly talking about Jesus every song, but they were in metal bands and they were Christians and they were singing about righteousness and all those, right? Love, whatever. And it was fascinating to me how the secular world shunned them because they're Christians, and how the Christian world shunned them because they're metal.
I know exactly. I know the story. I know it's hard because people can't see past the noise.
Yeah.
And that's the journey,
If I look at your stuff and then I look at Pollock's, I mean, you did one of the pieces you did, Winter Wonderland. It's absolutely beautiful. Like
that was taking that's now gets into what's Impressionism or Post-Impressionism. Okay. Pollock never did anything representational. He was always non-objective, abstract, and people mistake even what the word abstract. They think that abstract is always mushiness and all this, and the technical term abstract is just a reduction. It's an extreme reduction. When you go to buy a house, your lawyer finds you the abstract of the title. He goes to find a summary of your title so that it's legitimate. It's a misunderstood term. Yes, it can just mean non-objective, but its technical term is that it means basically a reduction or a very, very, very small summary of something. So when it's an abstract painting, if I look at the sky and it's blue sky and a yellow sun and a green field, and I get blue and yellow and green, and I just do the very quick blue, yellow, green, and it look like this, well, that's an abstract of nature.
Yeah.
Because I didn't sit there painting leaves, and so I'm just trying to show you it impressed me because it was this. So Impressionism was another movement in art where the artists, again, they were pushing the story of the Impressionists is fantastic. They pushed against the Academy, who was saying, this is what art is, and this is what art is. And they're like, yeah, but we're out in the fields and the sun and the people and the light through the trees, and it's happening so quickly. And the only way is to capture it is to paint it like this. And they'd be painting and they'd be passionate, and the art's all like this is, and oh, that's not art. You know, the Academy, they were rejected. They went and started their own galleries, and they had that's how the Impressionism movement started. But their work is magnificent. It's beautiful. And what is it? They were just trying to give you on the spot impression, not a representation, an impression of what they were seeing, the way the light was bouncing on the water. It looked like this or felt like this. And this is how that's the artist quickly, and it's just a gesture. That's Impressionism.
Yeah.
Post-Impressionism, like the Winter Wonderland painting, is when living upstate New York is amazing. The seasons are spectacular. The winter is remarkable. The drama of winter and the snow, and it's not just that, is when you stop to look at even though it's bare and like dead, look at all the colors in the grasses and the dead grasses, and these beautiful tones, and there's deep purples in there, or there's all these different colors and burnt oranges, and so you're now seeing these colors, driving down the road. I'm looking at nature, and then I get the image like imprinted in my mind, in my heart. And then I get a burden to, I just want to paint this scenario, this one. What did I see? So then the technique was driven. So that painting, there's no brushes involved. I do believe that it has a background that I did use a background, large brush, just to put a horizon and some hills in the far background to make it intelligible, to give it some depth. Then the rest of it is all drops and drips and splash of paint. And that's post-impressionism. After the impression, although you go back to your studio and you paint it based upon the image that's burning in your heart, and you're going from that impression rather than directly from nature. So that's post-impressionism.
That helps. That helps. I think a lot of people are going to be blessed by the fact that, we're getting this education on abstract expressionism, and then impressionism and post-impressionism, which is having that nomenclature helps a lot. And how would you categorize? I mean, you can't categorize all of your work, but I mean, is that like post-impressionistic kind of vibe?
A lot of mine is because I function like that. I will be driving down the road, not even now, and I haven't painted because I've been writing for the last few months, and so I'm itching in one sense, because I'm in upstate New York now, and the summer's here, and the wildflowers come, and I'm driving down, and on the side of the road, I mean, I'm just like fixated by the colors of these simple little flowers of nature. God, like in the ditch, he's like the master gardener of the ditch.
Yeah.
And everyone's racing by, and I'm like, look at that. That's in the ditch. Look how amazing that is. It's so beautiful. It's like mind-blowing. It's spectacular. It's in the ditch. Yeah. We have tiger lilies like lining the ditch. I mean, just rows of these bright orange masterpieces. And so I'm like, okay, I got, and then I want to go back and I want to paint that. So that's what's one mode of being an impressionist. As a photographer, then I'm a representational artist, because I've said, you know what, I could sit there for days and try to paint it and make it. There's people doing that going to be far better than me. I get a camera and click, and that's a beautiful representation of nature. It's amazing. You can't beat that. And then as an abstract, if I want to be really kid-like, and I'm really in a mode of being like a child, and there's a blank canvas and I've just got no idea what I'm going to do, I start playing with paint and having this adventure with just like shapes and lines and textures and see what happens. That's, for me, the abstract expressionist mode. And that's a mode. That's all it is. Just one mode.
What do you think? I mean, when you look at nature, we look at nature, we get super excited. I've always said that God is an artist.
Absolutely.
And when you look at the universe and you look at this habitat that he's built for us, and you look at this interplay of life that's happening all around us. You mentioned seeing flowers in a ditch and being amazed by it. This is like, there's so many things where God is, I don't want to make it sound like he's doing it for any ulterior motive. It's like he's showing off.
Absolutely.
It's just beautiful.
at us,
screaming at us. And so when you
well,
see
that's what
that,
Paul, and that's what Paul says. Then he says that the witness of nature. That's how I came to faith. So I
Mm,
came to faith on a mountaintop, contemplating an acorn through the witness of nature as an atheist, and God speaks to me through an acorn, and my life has changed forever. And so,
what was it about the acorn?
well, as somebody who was looking to end my life, I was 22 years old. I was successful. I had 3 businesses in Spain. I had 3 bars, hard rock bars, motorcycles, drugs, alcohol, you name it. Fast life. When you have 3 bars, 8 employees by the age of 22, I was doing very well, but I was mad. My bar was called Locos. It's called crazy. We were totally just off the wall, but I was dying inside. I'd always been a truth seeker. Nobody could give me the answers. So I'm struggling for years. And then I'd struggle with depression and just like wanting to end my life because I couldn't answer the questions. See, I couldn't, seeing nature so magnificent, and then seeing the madness of human beings and the madness of my life. And the disconnect was like, it doesn't make sense. What in the world? I mean, well, I need an explanation, and no one would get. I just remember standing up. I was with all these friends of mine, and we were all there doing something. I think it was like smoking dope or something. And I stood up, and I'm like, "There's got to be more to life than this. This is just die." And they're like, "Shut up, Jules." It's like basically eat and drink, for tomorrow we are to die. It's like they had that nihilism, and I'm crying out for an explanation. So I'm sitting on the mountain behind my house, this beautiful place where I grew up, and I had my little dog with me, and I would be up there a lot alone, just trying to nature was my solace, because it was the only thing that was just immaculate, constantly like perfect, constantly like beautiful. And anywhere you looked, whether you looked at an ant or a rock or a tree or a flower or a cloud, stars, moon, everything was spectacular. And I'm struggling to understand the why. And God obviously was leading me for years and leading me through all these heartaches and difficulties to that place on the mountain where I'm sitting on a rock. It's not on the top. The top of the mountain was probably 4 hours up. I'm like in a little foothill mountain. And there is a oak tree baby, or may not have even be a baby, because the mountain was limestone, but covered in oak trees, small oak trees. There's a whole industry with them in Spain for cork, and they grows the cork for the cork producing. And this tree is growing out of the rock. I'm sitting on the mountain. I'm like looking at this little bush. I'm sitting, and I'm like, wow, look at this. This is an acorn must have fallen down into this crag, and there must be dirt down there or water, and it sprouted and became a little tree, and it's sitting right there, and there's all these acorns all over it. And I'm looking, this is amazing. And I pluck one off, and I'm looking at the acorn and the cup. It sits in the little cup. It's like a little holder. And I'm looking at it, and I'm sort of, analyzing, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This thing grew out of this crag in the rock. It's gonna produce all these acorns that are gonna fall off the tree, and then critter will bury it somewhere else, and another tree will come up, and more acorns, and then another, and it's just like this sort of expanding millions of acorns. Wow, I'm just like in awe of this. And as I'm looking at the acorn in the cup, I popped it out, and I said, yeah, but the acorn is the star. He's the star player. He's like he's going to turn into a tree. He's the seed. The cup is like the servant. He's just holding the guy. He's just like the cup there, and he's going to fall to the ground and disintegrate to dust and nothing. And then I looked at the cup, and it had this beautiful pattern around the rim of the cup, like this little diamond texture pattern. And I was like, so why does it have this beautiful pattern on the cup? What's the point? It's going to just turn to dust. And at that moment, God split me in my mind in half. It was as if it's the only way I can explain it. Manifestation, revelation, however we want to try to make sense of it. He just stepped in to my mind and revealed himself, not in an audible voice, but in a voice that I could understand, to say, I am the designer and the creator of what you're looking at. That's why it's so beautiful. And I was like, oh, whoa, no, no one's ever made me, no one ever shared that, no one ever gave me that as like there's a God who designed, like I'm an artist and I make things and it makes total sense.
Mhm.
There's a God in the far more magnificent world, so spectacular, so powerful, so just inexplicably detailed and it perfect. Well, yeah, here to Dumbo, me, my little sketch shows. And this is the majesty of these things that I've been in awe of for so long. And now I meet the maker, and it's like it's perfectly common sense. I just never had the no one ever presented me with that idea before.
The
And
maker in an acorn. Yeah.
And I was changed forevermore.
Wow. That's when you're talking about the cup and the detail in that in the cup, that's the detail at which God does things has been, years ago we were at an aquarium. I can't remember if it was Long Beach or if it was Korea, but we were in one of the big aquariums, and they have this there's a fish that's got a blue light on it. Right? Exists at depths of oceans where nobody ever goes.
Yeah.
And yet it is just a phenomenal, why does it have a blue light? And you just think of all the life that is in the ocean, of all the life that is on this habitat as a total. You look at a blade of grass or an acorn cup and you just go, yeah, that's creativity right there. That is artistry at its finest. And the best we can do is express already what he's given us to express in some impressionistic way.
Yeah, it's like a response. All we can do is respond. What I think in the sort of why abstract art is often misunderstood and diminished, but it needs to be seen in this light really, is that abstract painting is really the most original imagery in existence on human terms, because there's only one of that. It's so unique. It's so absolutely unique. Whereas the Impressionism is, to me, the response to God, and to say, God, this is my little thumbnail sketch of trying to tell you how amazing you are by trying to paint this expression of my experience of seeing your beauty. Yeah. And so we are trying to we are imitators. We can't help it. But the abstract painting is beyond the imitation, there where God has actually given us the initiation where we can actually make that unique something that is totally unseen before and will always be irreplicable, because that, other than in a photograph, but you can't, it's just once you paint one of those paintings, you're not going to paint another one. That's it. It's just stuck in time. Yeah. So there's, he gives us that sharing in his divinity. When we are made in his image and likeness, imago Dei, we are the very image. Mm-hmm. We are, as Jesus said, when he quotes Psalms and says, arguing with the Pharisees, when that he calls us gods, small g gods. We are small g creators, made in the image and likeness of God, and we get to participate in the majesty, the miracle of conveying what's going on in here, getting it out through our hands or our voice or our existence, Jake, it's mind-blowing. And when we're having a conversation like this, but we can keep going off the deep end, because we're like, hey, where does it stop? And that's why I think worship comes in, and where you're like, wow, what is our response other than to say, you are beyond my words. I just can just worship. Makes me think of, Richard Dawkins, the great atheist, great God hater. Yeah. I pray that one day he really does get saved and converted, but he even admitted in one of his presentations that he was so in awe of what he was seeing that it made him want to worship.
Huh.
Yet he denied that very inclination of his being
Yeah.
by discounting that there would be anyone to worship. But he admitted it. And I said, man, if anyone just focuses on that, it shows that he knows, and he is without excuse, as Paul said.
That's that Romans 1 passage you talked about. You know,
Yes.
people, often people are arguing, well, if you prove to me that there's a God, and you don't have to go very far.
You can't, looks on your hand. Just look at your thumb. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife will sit there and try to convince you by looking at the hair on a bug's leg. She's like, look at the little hair on the leg. Look at that. It's just, it's mind blowing. And then it's so hard for me when I was blind before. I didn't know, but no one had ever presented me with that idea. I would think that afterwards, when you say to someone, look, it's like, it's in Hebrews, I think, where it's, that every house has a builder, and, it's like, so that everything has a creator. Mm-hmm. It's a reasonable, and it's a rational conclusion to, you can't tell me that I can paint a picture and sign my name on it, and you will acknowledge that I created that. And if you saw it, whether I was alive or dead, and then put that next to an acorn and say, you going to tell me that thing, which is so far more superior to anything that I could ever imagine, is just not the product of someone's mind? I mean, it's stupid. That's why he said they're without excuse. There is no excuse.
That would be like somebody saying they're going to find the taste of New York. It's a painting that you did, and they're going to find it, wherever in Marbella, in some wilderness part of Marbella, and go, oh yeah, that painting came about by accident. You're like, nobody would ever do that.
No.
They would say, oh, look at this painting here. I wonder who did it. Of course, your name would be on it. But I mean, if your name weren't on it, they'd be like, I wonder who did it. They would never even say, the words would never come out of their mouth that, oh, this must have happened by accident. Nature created this painting.
No, that's the disconnect. That is the sinful disconnect of the human heart. And it knows. It just refuses to acknowledge. I've seen that in my life where people often people where they want to take from me, and they've wanted to take and not acknowledge, where that's it's a part of human depravity, where it's like the stealing of somebody else's gift or talent for their own reason. And it's the same condition in the human heart for people who look at the things of God and they refuse. It's like they're saying, I'm not going to acknowledge God. They're so hell-bent on their hatred, which is that innate condition. But that's the way, it's as if that's the way of them even being vindictive or trying to punish or try to get their revenge by refusing to acknowledge his mastery. And because it's so inexcusable. That's all you can say. It's inexcusable.
Yeah, it doesn't make anybody who's been a victim of intellectual property theft, whether you have a neighbor that builds great street rods, right, like race cars, but with a modern touch to it, right? And people always want to take pictures of it. Nobody ever wants to give him credit for building it. It's like, you see his cars and everything on Instagram all the time on somebody else's account, but they never mention, his name.
Same problem.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. What do you think is, I think I know the answer to this, but could somebody look at a timeline of your work and see the ups and downs of your spiritual walk, or see the ascension of your closeness to Christ, or your maybe distance from him at any given point? Is that?
Yeah, I don't think so, because I don't tend to paint when I'm depressed. See, if I struggle, which I do at times, I was suicidal when I was 22, so I've always wrestled. But this is the funny thing with the world and the worldly art, is they relish in you wallowing in the mud, giving them some putrid expression of your dastardly condition. I'm like, well, what good is that going to do? It's like, okay, it's a struggle. I get it. Well, there's enough artists that have gone out there and blurted out their struggle for us to realize it's a struggle. How about a bit of life? How about a bit of joy, a bit of salvation, a bit of heal, a bit of light, a bit of good, positive? How about that? What's so?
Yeah.
Oh, no. That's we don't want beauty. We don't want decorative. The artwork so
we want love. Yeah.
Oh man, they're so conflicted. And you're like, you just want wallowing. You want people wallowing. You don't want the person that has found the answer. It reminds me of Keith Green, that great 70s singer and gospel singer and pianist, the Christian guy, a really powerful speaker. And he told his story. He was all part of the 60s seeker movement in LA and then California. Everyone's seekers and spiritual and doing all the East and all. And he said, once I found the answer and started telling everyone, I got it. I reached the end of the road. I found the answers. Jesus. No one wanted to listen anymore. They just wanted to keep on seeking. They just wanted the lifestyle of the seeker. They they didn't want the answer. And it's sort of in that same way in the art world. So you don't go to them with the answer. They're not interested in it. But my work in general, like I said, is I want if someone's going to buy my painting, I want it on the wall, that when they walk into their living room or wherever it is, they're like moved every single time. That's the power of art. If you have a powerful painting and it's on a wall, it's like switched on to that mode 24/7. So it doesn't change.
Yeah.
And you walk in and it will always, if it's going to uplift you, it's always going to uplift you, because that's the power of it. It really is. It's really the power. So I don't need to drag the world down. I have my testimony of how God delivered me from that, regardless of whether I struggle still or not. It's one of my things. I want people to come to light and to joy and salvation that only Jesus can give.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think it's the spiritual walk is that of joy and peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, prefaced by love. The closer you get to the Lord, the more you love. And it's interesting to me how much the world wants the constant seeking. They find value in, or some pseudo wisdom in, taking on the identity of a seeker, but never finding, and they
were really wanting it.
And they hate the very thing that offers them love unexpressible, that we try, you try to put in your paintings. I try to manifest other ways, but it's like, you have painting. I'm looking at the Taste of New York right now. That thing is bonkers. I mean, that thing is so pretty. And it says, when you see it, it just, it's like what you said, you put the painting on a wall and you go in and you look at it and you go, yeah, I feel the joy that painted it.
Yeah. Every time.
Yeah. And I don't know that I've been, that guy like that. I really didn't, whether it's like I'm a musician, but I didn't really learn to love music as an art form until probably the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And painting is kind of that too. I think every art form, until I started seeing, I guess before I started really meditating on the idea that nature is God's artwork and God is an artist. And I started seeing those expressions of art in everything that we do. Yeah. I mentioned the internal combustion engine earlier because that is a piece of art that came from inspiration from somebody. Now it's, people are going to say, well, that's engineering. That's just how things go together, and you add a little fuel and there's some explosion to it or whatever. But you go, yeah, somebody had that idea though.
That's right.
And that
inspiration. Yep.
It was inspiration, and those physics and that idea has always existed. God's always known it, how to make an internal combustion engine. And he always knew that at some point it would come about and he would give that to somebody, and he gave it to somebody, and we have cars today. So it's like, it's cool. the jet engine, it's the molecular bio, whatever it is, we're exploring what God has created already in his art, and then trying to translate that and give life to it, man. And you do a phenomenal job in.
Thank you for that, but it is a struggle because the response is always, like I said, difficult because you don't always get the response maybe you're hoping for. And if you are trying something, it's easy for me to paint a picture that people are going to look at. Oh, a lot of artists will default to painting, people that they scenes and images, or people that everybody's going to look at and say, oh, that's great, because they instantly recognize it. They see that this is a good job of painting something that I know. But I'm like, well, I'm not down that road. So, and I don't want to make it unintelligible. So the abstract art is limited to many people because they look at it and they don't get it. So that the impressionist is much more intelligible because you recognize, it's nature. He's trying to paint nature, and this is his impression of it. So that's a valid response to my work, and I thank you, though, as you look at the Taste of New York.
Yeah, in our last couple of minutes, let's give some encouragement to Christians generally who maybe haven't entertained art. Let's say let's not pick on the people at Liberty University. They mean well, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We've run into these brothers and sisters forever, kind of turn up a nose, whatever. Let's take a minute, encourage them. What can we tell them to open their minds a bit, if that's even possible?
Oh, absolutely. We need to look at Christian history. We need to look at the Reformation, and with all the remarkable theological truths that we derive from the Reformation, the reverse is also true in the rejection of it basically goes back to the fear of the Ten Commandments about creating images, and then the idolatry of Roman Catholicism, and then the rejection of the entire kit and caboodle, like the baby in the bathwater, meaning that the Protestant church, by and large, has walked away from the power of imagery as a communicative language of the gospel message. The gospel was preached in stained glass windows, pictures used with colored glass, creating light paintings in churches for centuries to communicate the message to people who were illiterate, who could not read, but they could read pictures. And they used pictures to communicate the gospel in stained glass, which we go to travel to cathedrals now. We're like, oh my goodness, so much beautiful art.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hold on, what are we saying? Yeah, it's remarkable. And then you look to the modern day church, a lot of Protestant churches, not all, but a lot of them, and you'll go in and there's nada, zip, nada, because they're afraid of creating image. Commandment in Exodus, in the Ten Commandments, Exodus
20,
I think it's 11 as well.
Reiterated in Deuteronomy too, but
don't make an image and bow down to it.
Yeah.
The tabernacle was full of images of celestial beings. They were angelic images. The Ark of the Covenant had two cherubs right on top of it, carved in acacia wood and wrapped in gold.
Yeah.
So these were sculptures of angelic celestial beings in the tabernacle itself. The prohibition is against creating imagery that then you bow down to. The prohibition, and then the fear is like, well, if you create the image, the temptation is you might bow down to it. Well, you know what? That's a responsibility issue. It's like the gun issue. It's like, it's true, you could, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just enjoy it as a way of understanding the divine realm. Maybe there's a way of which images they bring you into an awareness of God's presence by the pictures that speak to you here about the realities that we don't see here. And faith, you can go without pictures, that's fine, but when you read the Bible, it's mainly word pictures. They're words that create images in your mind of realities that God is conveying to us, whether revelation or whether history or whether the Garden of Eden. There's a pictures, and we don't read that and don't get pictures. You get pictures. So God is a God of pictures, and we as Christians can use the power of pictures to communicate our faith, our love, our values, and obviously, just response to nature, however you want to put it, or other images you might have. and not to be afraid to do that, because it is another legitimate method to communicate our faith, and that everybody can use it, and it's God-given gifts. You can't, and if the church embraces that, I think it would reach a whole swath of people who could only be reached through pictures.
That's right. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I want to thank you, Julian, for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you and to get this education on art. You are doing amazing work. I'll link everything in the show notes so people can get there, and then I'll link your everything. They can reach out to you, just so the audience knows. They can reach out to you. Instagram.
Julian Raven, julianraven.com is my website, or at julian.raven on Instagram.
Awesome. We'll get everybody there. We'll get everything in the show notes. And it was a pleasure talking to you, man. I hope we get to do it. I hope we get to do it again soon.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you for facilitating the conversation.
It's absolutely my pleasure, man. Good meeting you.
If you enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. For more information about Jake, log on to jakegiffen.com and find him on all social media platforms. Until next time, peace and power be yours.